they want to approach this.
Something you want to ask about enforcement?
Yeah, so on enforcement. So firstly, I just wanted to know, in terms of the new national regulator of construction products, when do you expect it to be operational, and what would its main role be?
Well, the OPSS is already in place, and I meet with them very regularly. I met with them last week. They are already doing market surveillance. They are already taking feedback from interested parties where there are concerns about specific products, and they have already taken action against a number. They are in the public domain, right? Yeah. So they've already taken action against a product from Kingspan, which I believe was withdrawn from the market, and they've already taken action against 2 products from Unilin, which was about 8-9 months ago, where they've also made adjustments where necessary. So in terms of the processes, they're already in place. There's I think best part of £20 million of RDL of funding on an annual basis for that work. It reports directly to the Secretary of State, and I act on behalf of the Secretary of State to talk to the OPSS about it, and they have a big programme of work, an expanding programme of work to make sure they're covering what they can.
What's your assessment with regards to sort of local authorities, and other enforcement bodies being adequately resourced to effectively carry out their enforcement duties?
On construction products or generally?
Generally.
So I think there is and I know Paul Morell has also talked about this. I think there is a question about how we make sure the system works in the long term, the interaction with trading standards and the OPSS. The OPSS have just had a lot of money. They're scaling up. I think that is a clear evidence from the part of the department that we are moving on this. But I do think there is further work to do with regards to individual trading standards. We will all know as constituency MPs that trading standards work extremely hard, but there is variability in their focus and their resources and what they look at and what the things are that come into their inboxes. So there is further work to do on that. OPSS, I think it's important that we have a central body that leads on that, and we've got that now and they're moving, but there is further work to do on that. I think in terms of enforcement generally, particularly around remediation, we put quite a lot of funds into the process to make that work. So we are funding individual authorities, particularly where there are large numbers of properties where there are problems with remediation. We are looping back to those authorities to make sure they are both using their own resources and the ones we've given them to make sure it works. That's happening on a very regular basis. There's another loop going on right now. There are some authorities which are further ahead than others. Some have got good reasons for that. Some we're needing to gently encourage to do more. But there is a lot of work going on to make sure the enforcement works.
So just on the topic of, it seems as though my constituency, I don't think there's been many constituencies that have been as badly affected by the building safety crisis than Ipswich. The mill, as you've already mentioned, is an incredibly complex case where over 200 of my constituents have been in limbo for years and years. We know there that there's issues with cladding, but we also know there's deep structural problems with the building as well. The FRAW, external walls, is currently being carried out because, frankly, at the moment my leaseholders are in the dark when it comes to really knowing what the actual problems are, because most of them, they're not living in the tower, they're living in the blocks. So there are issues of fire doors, I think, sometimes with material in the walls, etc. And I think it's right that they have full transparency. I think it is right that they know as much as possible. At the moment, they're not getting any assurances by the administrator that actually when this report is completed, it's going to be shared with leaseholders. What would your view on that be?
Transparency is best. It should be shared. Yeah,
thank you very much.
I mean, you're absolutely right. The mill is very complicated, and I'm grateful for all the work you're doing on it. But transparency is important. Leaseholders need to know what building they're living in.
It's pleasing that we're going to be bringing new, more stringent regulations, but it seems to me, certainly in Ipswich, there's been multiple cases where the existing regulations have not been followed and have been flagrantly not followed. Lang O'Rourke, who were the developer for the mill, who were paint themselves as a much respected company. I mean, as far as I can see, they did a shocking job when it came to the mill, and they seem to have got away with it. I mean, I know there was an out-of-court settlement, but still, I wonder what your view is on them and enforcement action on those sorts of big players who seem to have got away with poor work that has put my constituents in the cruelest form of limbo for a number of years, and also in terms of actually some of the council offices. I mean, in Ipswich, there's a whole load of buildings that frankly should never have been signed off. Not just the mill, but Cardinal Lofts is another example where you visited yourself. The issues there weren't minor; they were extensive. So I was just wondering, yes, it's all about going forward, moving forward, but a lot of my constituents think there's a great sense of unfairness that so many people who have been behind this seem to have gotten away with it, whereas the people paying the price are the people who were innocent, who did everything in good faith, who wanted to buy their first property, they wanted to do that, they saved up for that, and now they're trapped, they can't move on with their lives. So I just wanted to know to what extent that's a focus for you.
Yeah, huge focus. I mean, the question is always how to structure it, because what we want to do, I mean, ideally you would do everything at the same time, but not, we're not in an ideal world. So the first thing we've got to do is make sure that the remediation programme gets going. We've done that now. We've revised the statistics per some of your requests from this committee. Since October, I hope people can see, nearly 800 buildings now having completed, 1,500 in the process itself, significant movement on the cladding support scheme. So first thing to do is get the remediation going. Let's just get these buildings fixed where they're not, where they weren't being fixed before. The second thing to do is to separate out the ability for people to make life choices from the remediation of building, which is why I've done a lot of work with the lending industry, and I think that's moving in a really positive direction as well. Just signed up another number of banks and building societies to do that. The third thing is then, you were absolutely right to make sure that we don't forget that certain organisations were behind this, and they need, where we were able to do that, to make sure that they step up to the plate to resolve that. You can see the progress that's been made in terms of the Responsible Actors Scheme, the commitment from by the developer contract for 50-odd developers to actually take ownership of the buildings that they created, and whatever it is, 1,000 plus buildings, 2 billion plus amount of money that's going into there. So yeah, I hope you're seeing progress on that as well. But there is still a residual number of organisations and actors that we need to continue to pursue. We'll be able to say some stuff on that, and we'll be able to come more in the coming years ahead.
I mean, I'll just to finish off for me. I mean, it just seems that the problem has been that a number of actors have felt that they can get away with impunity. They can get away scot-free. Yeah. And I understand that, Lang O'Rourke, for example, still hasn't signed the developers' pledge. That's my understanding, that they still haven't signed that pledge, which I find, slightly baffling. So that's the end for me. I have, of course, invited you to Ipswich, which I hope you'll accept that invitation.
Very much. You are, just to finish quickly, you are absolutely right. There is a group of actors out there that acted badly. They shouldn't have acted badly in the first place. The second best thing you can do when you act badly is to sort out the stuff that you've done. There is still a group of actors within this process, some freeholders, some builders, some developers who are really acting egregiously.
I mean, on the final, I mean, as you would have noticed, St Francis Tower, where we, the third example I raise, where I've had a large number of constituents now for multiple years, but living in darkness with a shrink wrap, completely blocking natural light from there. And I appreciate the code of practice being published, but you've got an extraordinary situation where, of course, we asked the freeholder to meet with us, and they felt that they could ignore a minister of the Crown and not meet with the minister, which I just think, how is that allowed to happen? How are these actors get away with that?
And next step is to see what we can do to make that code of practice more rigorous and more enforceable. It's a voluntary code of practice. We're separating out the people who are playing ball for the people who aren't playing ball. And every time we do that, we get a residual group of people who are acting egregiously. We will take the action that is necessary where we're able to do it.
Just one bit, mate. I think Paul Morrell said no